Yeah, it should be. This is the bit where I always look at the camera for a few moments to say, am I actually live or am I not? But it's showing that we're now live. So we should be live in the Rising Fierce Collective, which is my group exclusively for women, dedicated to help them find that balance in life and love and business, and finding their voice, that sense of calm and well-being within their body. And apologies, we're a few minutes late this morning. We had some technical issues at my end. Zoom now and again likes to keep us on our toes. So Marsha and I couldn't actually hear each other this morning, but we got there in the end. So I'm so excited to have you here today, Marsha. I really can't thank you enough for joining us. Obviously, we've known each other since last year because we collaborated and were fellow authors in the I Fly book, which I have a copy with me today. So when you mentioned that you would be able to do this, I was so excited, and I know that a lot of the members in the group are as well. So thank you for joining. What I would like to do is just let you introduce yourself, because you'll do that way better than I will. You've got a lot of experience and knowledge. You do a lot of things. So we'd love to hear a bit about you.
Thank you, Juliette. I'm really happy to be able to speak in your group tonight and share my story and hopefully be an inspiration to other people that are looking for a natural way to heal themselves and take control of their lives and their health, because really that's my motto, is to take control of your health. After what I had been through for so long, for 7 years, I was chronically ill with fibromyalgia. And I had seen so many practitioners. I think the last time I counted was 15. And that's over a period of probably 10 years, really. I initially started to feel a little bit tired, so a bit of chronic fatigue. Then I think the next symptom was a bit of memory loss. And I put it down to stress. You know, we all have stress at different times of our lives, so I didn't think too much of it. But then I really started to notice that I couldn't remember people's names, and I would start to lose my, like mid-conversation, I'd start to lose where I was up to or what I had said, and I'd just get this complete blank. So the next thing that I started to experience was insomnia. And then I ended up putting a lot of weight on. So I've only been about between 61 and 63 kilos all my adult life, but I went up to 73. And that was due to lack of sleep. We all know that lack of sleep is related to that. So, but I did whatever I could to try and get my health under control by visiting all of those natural therapies. And it didn't really help me a lot. It did certainly drain my bank account. I didn't know who to see or what I needed or what I didn't need. It was really just, for a long time, it was a trial and error. So my symptoms progressed. I started to feel really severe chronic fatigue, on top of not being able to sleep. So I probably slept maybe 1 or 2 nights out of 7. And I think out of all of the symptoms that I had, that was probably the worst one, because it just makes you feel like you just want to scream. You just lose control of your whole life if you haven't had enough sleep.
Yeah, I can certainly resonate with that. You know, obviously in my journey, it's different in the sense of the diagnosis, but some of the symptoms actually were the same, which is really interesting. So for me, the sleep, out of not being able to control my body functions, out of panic attacks, out of anxiety, out of, you know, self-sabotage and chronic relationships and physical pain, actually the sleep was the worst. And I would wake up covered in sweat. If I had managed to fall asleep, I would wake up just covered in sweat, and then would be in an absolute panic and unable to get back to sleep. And it's so frustrating, draining, exhausting. You get angry. It's like a roller coaster of emotions. And a lot of people, you know, in war times use sleep deprivation as a method of torture, because it really does have such a huge impact on your mental, emotional, physical and spiritual well-being. It really, really breaks you down. So I can resonate, you know, with
Yes.
you saying that out of all of these debilitating symptoms that were affecting you physically, mentally, emotionally, sleep was one of the worst. And I think some people take it for granted that they have a good quality of sleep until they don't. And when it gets out of balance, it just affects every area of our lives. But I'm interested, Marsha, how did your symptoms start? Where did the diagnosis for fibromyalgia come with? Was that quite quickly, or did that take a long period of time?
It actually took a long period of time, and to be honest with you, I kind of had to fight for a diagnosis. I kind of had to fight for my right to be heard, and I felt like I really had to convince my doctor that I was unwell, because the problem with autoimmune, which I'm sure a lot of your listeners can relate to, is that it's an invisible disease. Most of the time I looked okay, but I spent a good hour or so getting ready, having a shower and doing my hair and putting makeup on, and especially enough to cover the really deep dark circles under my eyes. So I do take pride in my appearance, and even when I was sick, I kind of did hide my symptoms, to be honest, as well, when I was out in the public. Obviously not when I went to my doctor and told her about it, but at some point, oh, I think I've just lost my camera. Sorry, guys. Hang on just a sec. Okay, I'm back. Sorry, I don't know what's going on there. So yeah, look, it wasn't until I actually read an article in a magazine where a lady talked about all these symptoms that she had, and she went to her doctor and she was diagnosed with fibromyalgia. And I remember reading through that article, and I could resonate with absolutely everything that she was mentioning. So I did a little bit of research online and looked at the symptoms that she had mentioned, went to my doctor, and at this point, I think I was probably about 3 years into my pain and suffering, and had already spent about $7,000 or $8,000 trying to fix myself and trying lots of different diets, lots of different healing modalities and supplements and things like that. But look, the diagnosis really was something I had to fight for, which is really sad, because, you know, when you go to the doctor and you say, look, I've got bladder incontinence and I can't hear properly, and my vision is becoming really blurry, and I've got pain from head to toe every single day, and I'm not sleeping, and my memory is failing me, and my cognitive function's really bad, and I'm shaking, and I've got this involuntary tick in my neck that I just kept going like this all the time. And I was 43. So, you know, all of those symptoms were just clearly not normal for a 43-year-old person. I'm 47 now. And it was probably another 4 years after that that I continued to experience those symptoms, but in fact, they got a lot worse. So one of the symptoms that persisted quite badly was allergies towards different foods, but I didn't know what sort of foods I was allergic to. So then I lost a lot of weight because I was very scared to eat certain things, because I would end up having an anaphylactic reaction. So I tried all sorts of things, like I said, all the different diets. I tried to go vegan and sugar-free and gluten-free and vegetarian, and I tried the blood type diet, and I think a lot of them did help me to some degree, but it didn't really stop my illness in its track. I think it allowed me to cope as my life went on, but my symptoms did slowly get worse. I think it probably prolonged it.
Yeah, I was going to say, I know that you share in your chapter of the book around, you know, how the impact of that on your day-to-day life. For example, you mentioned getting someone to manage your finances and things like that, because it was having, you know, tell us a bit about the impact of that, because that sounds as though you were doing a lot. You know, you were, I mean, I know myself, the effort that it takes. I don't do diets that often, but I do see people on Facebook and friends, and they, you know, they do diets. If I, you know, want to lose weight, I kind of know what I need to do. So I don't follow a diet methodology. It's about increasing exercises and watching, you know, the processed food and the natural food. I don't believe in all the counting and restricting myself. And I find diets very exhausting. The amount of effort that actually has to go into that is phenomenal.
Yes.
You're trying all of these different things when you don't actually have any energy. You're exhausted, you're in pain, you're not sleeping. How did you actually manage that on a day-to-day basis?
It was very, very difficult. And on some of my darkest days, I did, the thought of suicide did actually cross my mind, and I need to be honest about that. It's very, very serious. Being in the line of work that I'm in now, being an autoimmune recovery coach, I do hear of that quite often. I'm helping people currently at this very moment who have tried suiciding 4 times, up to 4 times. So, it just really, for me, when I started my Facebook page to share my story about how I healed within 4 months, once I found the right healing modality, I started to hear lots of other stories from other people who were saying that they hid their symptoms, that they didn't tell anyone, they were embarrassed. And I found that it was just a way of life. It's the way that, it's the only control that we have of our lives is to fake what's going on, because we've lost control of everything else. And the few times that I did go out to see friends for coffee or lunches, it was very, very rare, because I felt so dreadful. And a friend would ask me, so how are you going? And the last thing I want to do is sit there and say, well, I've got this and this and this, and I feel terrible, and I didn't sleep, and I'm in pain. You just don't talk about that. You want your life to continue as normal as much as possible. So, definitely my friends did notice that I wasn't really myself, but to the degree that I was really suffering, they had no idea.
I think
so
much humans can endure. Like you said, we kind of fake it, because we want to fit in. We want our life to go on as normal. We don't want to be the victim. We want to keep going as best we can. And it's amazing how many alternative routes and things we can put in place to actually bypass showing what's really going on, behind the scenes, if you like.
That's right. And a lot of this comes back to my mindset training that I've had over the years. So I've followed all of the gurus, like Bob Proctor and Tony Robbins, and I've watched The Secret I don't know how many times. So I'm a really big believer in the law of attraction. So I also didn't want to give any control over my disease or condition, whatever you want to call it, because it meant that I'd lost control, and I didn't want to lose control. I had already given control to my GP, my doctor here. So the law of attraction, to me means whatever you give your attention to grows. And that's not something that I was willing to do. I didn't want to give my condition any power over me. I didn't want to acknowledge it. I didn't want to talk about it. I wanted life to continue as normal, whilst in the background I was looking for solutions. So to answer your question before, in regards to how did it affect me, well, I lost my job, or actually I left my job, because I was a sign language interpreter. So I was working with deaf children. And it obviously became just impossible, because I couldn't remember the signing, or I couldn't remember the sentence that they just spoke that I needed to interpret. So that really impacted me a lot, because I loved my job, and I felt very embarrassed that I couldn't do it, but I couldn't really explain it either, because when you look online and you Google fibromyalgia, there's really not a lot of research on it. It's not really recognized even by some doctors. And so a lot of doctors are even saying it's in the patient's head. And I can definitely relate to that, because I was offered medical retirement when I was 44 years old. And the doctor's tone was one of, is that all you want, Marsha? Do you just want to not work? So I was really offended by that. And I definitely said a big fat no. That's definitely not what I want. I want a good life. I want to buy a house. I want to travel. I've got goals. I want to buy a new car. I want to donate, things like that. So, and yes, also giving control of my finances to outsourcing my finances to another company. It was just absolutely something I had to do, because, to be honest with you, opening mail, I couldn't even do it, because I thought, what's going to be in this envelope? And if I open it and read it and it's a bill, what do I do now? Where do I file it? And will I remember where I file it? So that's something I definitely had to do. And that was hard, because I was only able to work part-time, and I was working as a disability support worker, which was beneficial for me. I had one client who was my responsibility in this whole house. And so I only had to do the basics, and then the rest of my time was for me, so I could lie down and rest, and nobody saw that. So I hid my condition for a very long time. And obviously, with regards just going back to diets, Juliette, I wasn't trying any of those diets to lose weight. I was trying different foods, because I knew that some foods were causing my anaphylaxis.
Absolutely.
And so what I came across is two specific things. I created an elimination diet, just simply through doing lots of research myself about, what causes reactions. So the interesting thing is that I initially traced it back to how I used to feel after having some wine. I'm not a big drinker. I've never, ever been a big drinker, but my previous partner used to like to buy a really nice bottle of wine. So, I'd have a glass or two with a meal once or twice a week. And the next day I would just feel like I was drunk. And I decided to stop drinking because I didn't like feeling like that. And when I became sick, I started to feel like that again, but I wasn't drinking the wine. So I thought, what was in that wine that used to make me feel like that? So I started looking at labels and realized it was thiol sulfates, which is the preservative. And so I started researching that and found that onion and garlic have naturally occurring very high levels of sulfites. So I cut them out of my diet. So that's kind of what I mean by, trying different diets and trying different foods, cutting things out, adding things in, doing low fat, doing high fat, all sorts of things. But that was a really, really big turnaround for me. And I had a big success by stopping the onion and garlic. But then things kind of regressed again. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to research sulfates. So of course we know that sulfates are a preservative, and it's in a lot of things like shampoos and soaps and all sorts of things. So makeups even. So I eliminated all of those things and found, some help with that. And then as I continued my research, I found an article which referred to thiol sulfates. So thiol sulfates are in a lot of our foods, in most of our foods, and in a lot of our vegetables. And I'm certainly not suggesting that you stop eating these vegetables, because that's not realistic. I did for a short period of time, and I'll explain that. But thiol sulfates, the job of a food, generally vegetables and fruits that have naturally occurring thiol sulfates in them, what their job is to draw the heavy metals from the liver and the kidneys and to digest them naturally, which is this grand idea that, food nourishes us and cleanses us. And it's normal and natural, and it's supposed to work that way. But the problem is, if you have leaky gut, all those heavy metals, which are supposed to be digested the normal, natural way and discarded as waste, they end up in the bloodstream again through the broken gut lining. And so that was a really big eye-opener for me. So I immediately went on to a thiol sulfite-free diet, and within 2 days, I was free of these anaphylactic responses. However, it wasn't a diet that was something I could, it wasn't long sustainably, something I could do for the rest of my life, because I was only able to eat four vegetables that don't have thiol sulfates. As I went on, I came across another article about lectins, and there's some new research coming about that now. And lectins, what they are is a plant's natural protein that kill the bugs that try to eat it. When I say plants, I mean vegetables. So, and mostly are green vegetables. So things like kale and spinach and broccoli. So I read about lectins, that they have a naturally occurring compound that kills the bugs that try to eat it. That's the lectin. But we eat those foods and we have parasites, which is, part of our ecosystem. We all have them.
Yeah.
And so when we eat those foods, our parasites feel the effect of being killed off by those lectins too, because they're a living microorganism. And so as they fight for survival, they will inject poison into the gut lining where they burrow and live. And you will have more and more parasites depending on what your diet is like. So if your diet is high in sugar, dairy, and gluten, you will have more parasites, and also red meats.
Yeah.
So I cut all of those foods out of my diet to eliminate the amount of parasites that I had, and to eliminate the amount of poison that was being injected into my gut lining, which was making me feel very sick. It was making me have IBS issues and lots of, inflammation, which is the immune response. So I learned a lot from that. So to answer your question about diets, I, for a short period of time, went on an elimination diet that cut out any foods with thiol sulfates and lectins. And I'm writing a book at the moment to share that information, and to explain to people why it's important to avoid those foods while they heal their gut. Okay, because what I found through my research is that autoimmune is basically just a case of really severe leaky gut. But before you go on to Google and go, oh, I've got severe leaky gut, or what do I need to do? Be very careful. There's a certain amount of things that you need to take, certain things that you should definitely not take. You should definitely not do a heavy metal detox, a liver detox. You should definitely not do a parasite cleanse. And there are reasons for that. We don't have really time to go into that, but you know, I'm happy for people to get in touch with me after this chat today, and I can definitely explain that further.
And that's why I was meaning about the diet. I wasn't meaning for the weight loss. It was more from the point of view of the effort it took for you to have to learn all of this information whilst buying the food, preparing the foods, you know, and letting it go, reflecting to see the impact on your body whilst your energy levels were so low. I mean, I guess at the beginning, you know, we look to the doctors, we look to the medical system to give us this sort of information, but you had to go and study for years to become an expert in this field, to apply it to yourself to heal. And you said earlier, 4 months is ultimately when you created your system and you established that. After how many years did you have symptoms in total? How many years?
7 years.
7 years.
7 years, yeah. And you're absolutely right. I did this while I was chronically ill, so it was extremely difficult. But I was in survival mode. I had no choice. I had to do it. Everything that I ate, I had from home. I didn't go out at all.
And can I
couldn't.
What prompted you to do that, Marsha? Because I speak to a lot of people who have autoimmune illness or symptoms. I speak to a lot of people who have anxiety or depression or some sort of, you know, imbalance in your body, but they don't go to the extent that you did or that I did, you know, to learn how to heal naturally. So I openly share my story. I'd love for you to tell us. You talked about you were in survival mode and you've no choice, and that's kind of similar to what I say, but where I always think there's a point where we think that's it. You know, do you remember what that point is, or what prompted you to go on that journey rather than relying on the medical system?
Yes, it was a couple of days after I received my diagnosis of multiple sclerosis. So that was in January 2019, so just over a year ago. And at that point, I was experiencing something called an MS hug, which I had no idea what that even was until my doctor told me, and when I told her about the symptoms. So to cut a long story short, it's basically you feel like you're completely constricted around the chest, like you're being squeezed, like all the air is being squeezed out of your lungs and you can't take a breath in. So I had 3 of those experiences. And so I went back to my GP again, shoot me now, but I had nowhere else to go. I didn't know what else to do or who to seek help from because I'd been everywhere. And it was, I remember that the appointment prior to this, she suggested that I go and see a psychiatrist. So I was even in 2 minds about going to see her because I thought, oh, is she even going to believe me this time? How am I going to even explain this to her? She's going to think I'm crazy. So I did explain it to her. She said, that's the MS hug. And I just went, hang on, what MS? And she said, oh, yeah, well, you know, it makes sense from all the symptoms that you've told me about over the past few years. So that's how that all unfolded. Now, 3 days after this diagnosis, I probably took a day or 2 really to suffer. And I thought, oh my God, this is it. And all I could see was there's no cure. MS, oh my God, multiple sclerosis, there's no cure, there's no cure, there's no cure. And then I remembered what I knew. I remembered about the law of attraction. I remembered to stay strong. I remembered that I knew enough. I knew enough to know that you can heal naturally. Other people have healed naturally. I didn't know at that point that anybody had healed from multiple sclerosis or fibromyalgia. At that point, I did more research, spoke to more people. I found out, yes, fibromyalgia is an autoimmune disease. I think that it hasn't been classed as one, like professionally, because there's not enough research on it. But having suffered from fibromyalgia, I can definitely assure you that it is definitely an autoimmune disease because it is just generally just it's an immune reaction to toxins in the blood. And how do they get there? Through the broken gut lining. So ultimately what I did was heal my gut, and then I started to improve very, very drastically. But I did take some therapeutic doses of certain supplements to help me. And the reason that I didn't give up was because I knew deep down in my heart that there was a solution. And I just couldn't access it, Juliette, because my brain wasn't functioning properly. But I think the answer to my prayer came when 2 days after my diagnosis, 3 days after my diagnosis, I was invited to a health event that I attended. And there were 2 doctors there, 2 doctors of natural health. One was from the US and one was from Australia, where I live. And I, explained my story. I showed them my photos, and I was really in a lot of pain on that night as well. And we devised a protocol. And one of the doctors said, "Oh, MS, that's just autoimmune. You can treat that. You can heal that. That's no problem." And I'm just like, hang on, what? And so I was the protocol was suggested to me. And one of the doctors in particular, I spoke to for 4 hours on the phone. And I remembered everything that he said to me. And I just didn't have access to it in my brain because I just wasn't functioning properly. But all the things that he told me, I thought, oh, that's right. Yes, everything starts in the gut. Yes, okay. So having that conversation with him really inspired me, and I immediately ordered everything that he suggested. And 4 months later, I was symptom free. Within 8 weeks, I was back at full-time work. And at the point where I started, I was barely able to stand for longer than 10 minutes. I couldn't go to the shopping center because I had photosensitivity to all the lights and noise, and I just didn't want to be around people. I wanted to just curl up and be in my bed or on the lounge, where I, made a second home for myself. And do you know what? It wasn't until I started to really become a lot better that I realized just how much I had suffered over the years, because it like fibromyalgia and MS kind of very slowly progress. And I had readjusted my life around my illness. So I had my daughter helping out more. She was in the later years of high school, so that was really quite hard for her. My neighbours were mowing the lawn. I had help with cleaning the floors, and my daughter was definitely doing more, helping with cooking and things like that. And so, I didn't even realise it kind of crept up on me slowly, that I made all those adjustments in my life to accommodate my disease. So once I was better, I'm just like, oh, what did I used to do with my time? And I realised that I used to do all sorts of things like reading, but I really got it to a point where I couldn't even hold a book. That's how sick I was. And to even try and make sense of anything, that was not going to happen at all. So, I used to go to yoga every week, and I hadn't done that. I hadn't walked my dogs for a couple of years because I couldn't walk for longer than 10 minutes without lying on the lounge for 3 or 4 hours afterwards. So, the depth of my suffering really flashed before my eyes. And when I healed, and it was so easy and so inexpensive, I was really angry. I felt so angry because I suffered for so long, and I thought about all the other people that are suffering unnecessarily, because once you know what it is that you need to do to heal your body and to regenerate all the cells in your body, you can do anything. There's people all over the world healing themselves from all sorts of diseases. You just need the right information. And unfortunately, it is being held from us because, don't want to say too much about it, but there's a lot of money in sickness. I'll say that.
Yes, certainly, that's been my experience, and I always share that as well. I say that, the answer is in nature, the answer is in, the food. We have everything that we need around us, but as a society, we're not open to it, and generation upon generation, the information's been lost somewhere, where now, when antibiotics came in, it was seen as the wonder drug. It was going to kill all infection, make everyone better. And now, many years down the line, a few decades down the line, we're in the mindset that if we get ill, we go to the doctor. And I actually have a very close family member, even with everything that I know, is very reluctant to do the natural way. It's very much, if I have something wrong, I'll go and speak to the doctor. And like you mentioned, you know, in some cases that is appropriate, but in other cases it's not. And at the end of the day, our body is our own. And I love that you said it's our responsibility, because it's our body, but we seem to relinquish this complete control
Yeah.
the medical system without educating ourselves, without having any awareness. And certainly for me, when I was in that life and death situation, that was absolutely unacceptable for me to relinquish that complete control. But I was almost seen as being a difficult patient. And I had many doctors walk out of my room and slam the door because I wanted to breastfeed my baby, even though I was dying, because I wanted to have, you know, painkillers or drugs that weren't going to affect my baby if I breastfed. That wasn't seen as acceptable because it was too much effort for them to research and not prescribe me the medication that makes the most money from the pharmaceutical companies. So until all of that happened for me, I blindly trusted, but then my eyes opened, and you can't then unsee, you can't unlearn, you can't unexperience what you know. But it is frustrating for me, and I don't know how you feel, but to see lots of people still having that suffering and that pain without realizing that there is another way, that there are other choices, that it is possible to heal without us negating. We're not saying the pain is not real, because like you, at a certain point, I was advised to see, you know, a psychologist, and it is very, very hurtful. It's offensive because the pain is real. It's very real physical symptoms. And I know a lot of people in the circumstance now, when they hear that, they just think, well, you don't understand. You don't know what my symptoms are. You don't understand my life. And yes, we all have our own story, but there is so many people suffering and not open to the fact that there are choices and there is another way. So I guess, you know, I was going to ask you why you wanted to write I Fly. I'm assuming it's along these lines. Perhaps you can tell us a bit about that.
Yes, I definitely wanted to be a part of this book so that I could share my story and reach more people, because, you know, I started to think, well, God, if I'm suffering from, you know, fibromyalgia and MS and lots of other autoimmune conditions. I had really, really severe hay fever every single day. I had arthritis in my fingers and my feet. I had eczema, irritable bowel syndrome, so many. So, and I know that there's a lot of people out there that are suffering from these conditions. So I wanted to be a part of the book so that I could explain to people that you do have a choice. You do have a choice to take control of your own health. And I want to be that advocate for people that are suffering. I want to know that there is hope, and that they do have the support that they're looking for. And healing is, it's not hard. It's actually so much easier than sickness. It does definitely take a level of commitment and dedication, and it does take, you know, some change in your mindset, and you know, believing that you can heal.
Yeah, you have to believe it's possible first. I'm just looking at some comments while we've been chatting. There's actually people. So, you know, some people are saying they can resonate with this. This is their life. They haven't slept properly in weeks. Someone's saying they would really like to get in touch with you because they're really struggling just now with their symptoms. It feels like they've found the answer listening to your words after trying to get answers for years. So I know after this conversation, I'm going to post your bio and your contact details in the group, so that if anyone wants to reach out, you know, they can do that. Someone else is saying that they have, and sorry, Emma, if I'm getting this wrong, anosmia, which is no taste or smell, and the ENT consultant only prescribes steroids as treatment and would discuss natural alternatives with me. And I don't know about you, Marsha, but certainly when I was ill, you know, my doctors were not open to natural remedies. I think they thought I had lost my mind at a certain point, because I was using energy healing, hypnotherapy, essential oils, herbs and herbal teas, like you, trying to heal my gut, looking at all the natural foods instead of medication. I completely stopped all medication. And they actually had, you know, like a community kind of psychiatric team assessed me, because I think because I stopped all medication, all painkillers, you know, iron tablets, antibiotics, I stopped everything. And I think they thought that I had lost my mind. But within 3 months, I was healed. Everything was back in the normal range within 3 months. And they told me that with the medication, it would take me at least a year to have my blood and everything back in the normal range. And I didn't follow any of their advice. And within 3 months, through natural, I was healed. But it's you almost have to fight with them to get to that stage. But ultimately, it is your body.
Yeah. I did feel the same way about my doctor. Once, like I said, I felt really angry once I was healed, and relieved, of course, like I said in my chapter. But I was very angry at my doctor. And then, you know, I guess I probably came to my senses a little bit and thought, well, she probably doesn't know. You know, she's researching and studying medicine.
Exactly.
So you can't really go to a doctor and ask a medicine doctor about natural health. You need to go to a naturopath, even though I did do that and they didn't help me. But, you know, the other issue is that, you know, the medicine doctors, they will lose their license if they recommend that you go, you know, and try the natural way. But also you're a paying customer, so they have a business to run. So as long as you're coming to them and complaining about certain symptoms, you'll be prescribed drugs. If that's your way that you want to go, then go for it. I had no choice for a while. I was on antidepressants, I was on anti-anxiety medication, sleep medication, anti-pain, like the strongest one. I was on steroids as well for the anaphylactic attacks, and I was on antihistamine daily. I was so tired. I'm not on any of it anymore, but I certainly wouldn't suggest anybody just stop their medication. That's not the way to go. You can, the products that I suggest in my protocol come from 5 different companies. I have been very, very busy researching and finding the absolute very best of the products, and most of them I still use. And all they are products that support the body's natural biochemical process to heal itself. So at some point you're going to go, you know what, I don't think I need these painkillers anymore. And I have some clients who are like that within 2 or 3 weeks. One guy just recently was like a week. It's like, oh my God, I don't have pain today. He was taking like 4 or 5 lots of tablets a day for pain. He said, I think I took 1, or was that yesterday? So, you know, it's such a blessing for me to be able to reach out to others and help them and make sense of it. And one of the things that I really want to make very clear in this chat today is that I take the time in my consultations to explain what's happening. Why you got sick, what's happening to your body, what you need to do to heal it so that you're in control. I could sit here and say, take this and this and this, but then I would be like everybody else that you've already seen. You need to know why, what's happened to your body, why do I need to take that? These are all the questions I ask. Why are you giving me that? How long do I have to take it? What's it going to do for me? And is it going to heal me? So that's something that's really important to me, that people understand what's happening, which, you know, knowledge is power. It gives you control. It's your body. You know exactly what's going on and what you need to do.
You know, that's a statement that I always say in the group, that awareness is empowerment. So if we have the knowledge and we can educate ourselves on what's happening in our body, then we can do something about it. We can make different choices. We can heal. So it sounds as though some of your, you know, your language is similar to mine, albeit applied in a very different way for a different illness. But it's really just how much similar it is. So there's a few people, you know, who are saying, you know, they're going to get in touch with you because this, unfortunately, sounds as though they're on that cycle of, you know, you were there for 7 years trying to find the answer. And I'm pretty sure that some people stay there for life because they don't, unfortunately, have access to, or they don't know about the alternative way. So if you had any kind of, you know, words of wisdom to anyone who is struggling just now, you know, where would you suggest that they start?
Well, definitely by having a chat to me, because you know, the thing is, I've lived through it. I've been through it. When I went to see my GP, she had not been through what I went through, so she couldn't commiserate, I guess, or understand or know what to suggest to make me feel better. Inflammation pain is absolutely horrifying. It attacks every single part of your body, and because it's the immune system responding to toxins, or what we call free radicals, in the blood, and blood runs throughout the whole body. So people have, you know, swollen feet or swollen fingers, or you know, a swollen face like I did, and you will see that in my before and after photos. So, you know, some people will end up with thyroid issues. Some people will end up with IBS. So, you know, it all comes back to the gut. I think, you know, do lots and lots of research, reach out to people, ask questions, go the natural way, stay on your medication until your doctor tells you to go off. I think that's one really important gem that you need to take away from this. But, you know, have the vision of yourself being healthy, and feel it and believe it and know it in all your heart that you will heal, and that you will bring the people into your life to help you to heal. I may not be the complete answer for you, but I'm certainly here, you know, ready and willing to help anybody that wants to reach out. And like I said, it's easier to heal, to go through the journey of healing, than it is to go through the journey of being sick. It is cheaper to go through the journey of healing than it is the journey of being sick. So any other gems? Gosh, you know, we don't really have time to I guess, to go into all of the supplements that I use, but there were 4 in particular that I use and that I recommend with every person with an autoimmune disease, and all 4 products do something completely different. And what's interesting about all these is that I didn't know any of them existed. I didn't know anything about, I had never even heard of them. So you've really got to dig deep, and, you know, yeah, just ask lots of people. If it's not me, ask someone, about, you know, research, go online, Google healing autoimmune, or whatever it is that you know, the symptom that you've got. But yeah, just reach out, find yourself a support group, and don't talk about your disease too often. That's something else, I guess, one gem that I'd like to part with. I didn't talk about it too much because I didn't want it to own me. I wanted to heal. I wanted to focus on healing. I only wanted to talk about or read about or think about healing. I thought about happiness. I looked at myself as being healthy. I was juicing. I couldn't go for a walk, but, you know, I did whatever I could to be healthy and to drink lots of water. And I just knew within my whole heart, mind and soul that I would heal. And I think that's really why I was invited to that health event where my prayers were answered. I begged.
It's amazing how it works. You know, when you dedicate your mind, your body, your soul, that's what's going to happen. But like you say, the universe has no option but to deliver that to you. Whereas if you focus on the symptoms, the illness, the pain, then we find more of that. And that's what I tell, you know, the people in my group. If we want to look for problems, they're there. We'll find them. They're always there. If we want to look for solutions, they're there too.
Exactly.
We have to make a choice. What are we going to look for today? And I tell everyone in the group, you know, to do that self-check process. Ask yourself continually in the morning, throughout the day, in the evening, how am I right now? How is my mind? How is my body?
Yeah.
What do I need in this moment? And am I looking for problems, or am I looking for solutions?
Yes.
So,
I 2 days, like 2 or 3 days after my diagnosis of MS, when I allowed myself to, you know, feel sorry for myself, I guess, or just go, oh my God, this is it. Oh my God, there's no cure for MS. And I really got into that whole heaviness that I hadn't felt for a long time, really. I felt like I was about to give up. And I knew that if I would give up, that I would fall to the floor, and I would need that walker or the wheelchair. That's how close I came to giving up. And I think I allowed that for a day or two. And then I woke, I think I went to bed the second night and I prayed. Now, I don't come from a religious family. I believe in God. I'm Christian, but I've not really been to church very much. But I turned to God and I said, this is not how my story is going to end. This is not it for me. Covered in goosebumps right now. But yeah, I knew that, no, that this is not it for me. And my daughter found out about the MS, and I said, don't worry, it's okay, I'm going to be fine. And I believed it in my whole heart. And then, you know, from there, things really drastically improved. So yeah, now I'm very happy and very blessed to be able to share my information with others and help them to understand what is an autoimmune disease. It's not the body attacking itself. It's not that. They're just trying to confuse you and take away that feeling of belief that you can do something about it. You know, they make it so complicated that you feel like there's nothing you could possibly do. You have to go to the professionals. But no, I didn't want to give my power away to that
We're
level.
taught so many things growing up, you know, at school, if we went to any sort of further education at college, at university, we spend a lot of time studying external things. And I think there's a real gap that we don't actually learn too much about the body, about the systems, about natural processes. And like you, when I became ill, I went and studied, you know, a naturopathy diploma, and I studied lots of different things because I realised I really didn't know very much about food, herbs, natural healing, you know, the gut. I didn't know about any of these, you know, important things in our bodies, which now kind of astounds me, but it's certainly not the norm for people. You know, the amount of information that you've shared in this session has been mind-blowing. So thank you for that. I'm sure a lot of people are thinking, wow, I didn't know, you know, any of that, because it's really not the norm, even for people who have that illness.
Power to the people though, and with social media, you know, we're all connecting, we're all sharing our stories, and we know that we have more control of our bodies and minds than, you know, than I think that the higher powers want us to have.
Yeah, a couple of people are saying the diagnosis that I was given was MS2, but I chose not to have that label or condition, and someone else has said, you know, me too. So they're certainly resonating with the story. So thank you for joining. I'm conscious I've took up, you know, a lot of your time. For us, it's morning, but for you, it's evening, obviously, in Australia. So, you know, I really thank you very much for coming online this evening and sharing this. I was so excited to have you, and I'm sure that, you know, everyone in the group has gained a lot from it.
Wonderful.
Thank you again. And if you just pop me through your Facebook page or wherever is the best place for them to reach out and talk to you about your services or products or how they can get more help, then just send them and I'll let them I'll put them in the group so that people can access them.
Absolutely. Might be my pleasure.
Fantastic.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Enjoy the rest of your week, Marsha, and I shall speak to you.
Thanks, Juliette. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.